다 주무치기 신선 충주신 자장도 특수불라나 신에 파쇼기 센트로더라 다 점도 측에서 특수불라와이나 파일라라 신수 추바 마체 아니 다 랍차디가 수기요마다 게 되는 라인선이야 라 아주 이제 수준적인 센트로에 책도 아니 제베세 지치바 냠주로에 제도 된대위 수수기다 지기 제세 상식선 비추바지랑 제를 여바이나야 다 츠츠볼라 소바드네 지바 마르치 페지다마이나 아니 디죠 소소게 지바디야 마냠도 라 대시 진지 있어 예도 모이 근데 인상 아니 시도 모이다 간다데 츠츠볼 지볼라서 제도 모이 내가 가리네 라 제도 모이 아니 츠츠도다 가리네 처마빵 거야더라 츠츠 모아지 세라레 이래디 근데 츠츠보다 다 간데 지금 나보던데 지카지 연장부로지네 지금 고고단지 시에줘라밀라 보디네로 참마 뽕고야데 아니 제세 상지선부터게 아니 라레 레스.
So now, moving on with the text, we are at the 34th verse. The practice of all the Bodhisattvas is to avoid harsh words which others might find unpleasant or distasteful, since abusive language upsets the minds of others and thereby undermines a Bodhisattva's conduct. So I think this is quite self-explanatory, but still, when we are talking about harsh words, I think we need to keep in mind that it's not only harsh words which inflict harm upon others. It's also sweet words which are informed by motivation to fool others can also inflict similar harm upon others. So, in essence, it is saying that it is very unbecoming of a bodhisattva to engage in harsh words and such manipulative speeches.
심지송가 빠데 도이나 딜라다 뉴모 콤스랑 아드랑젤라 차다모서 되네 뉴모 콤나 뉴모 콤베니베 도바카 뉴모데베 다 콤야 마타나 아니 치도 님보로 땜바이나 칼레카부 남선 존토마 레스트라 아니 텐헤 치비스타 수 텐데비 템바다 신신 줄라덴베 아니 치빌로스라 신비스 님부 천중데스 텐데비 님부디 네 가선단다 뉴몬바 되게 다도 샤네라 되게 안에 다도 바 천셔도 바 정거치 근데 천셔 중에 다들 같은 해대 tem바다 신연도 아니지 뉴몬도 바 pomma chevi게 아니 님보바 천셔도들 빼셔라 나도 지 천셔도 지 잘라도 두고에는 지대 맨달아 수고지 고고라 디나시기 뉴몬 마 좀에디 아니 가서 tem바다 신연도 저기 아니 따다 숨고에는 그 천셔도 책이래스 아니 차소 뇨모 담보 지마타 just 땅어들은 되셔시나 군도 가리나 로로 지마타도 수수고 로로 순지시나 만 좀멜레레 하고요. 근데 뭔좀 제바디 제sel야 뜻이 부응원들 남서 마디 디마솔나 수수 남주 나자 젠데 디가나 산노 땅디니지나 아니 로 지마타 다 디마솔나 남서 마 가야요. 계승한테 디가라 마카야도 더 템바데 신예도 좀 메와이나 아니 뇨모 코노 페도 디가나 산노 가 땅이라스.
So the next verse, it reads, the practice of all the bodhisattvas is to slay attachment and arrest mind's afflictions at once the moment they arise, taking as weapons the remedies held with mindfulness and vigilance. For once the leshas, here this word means afflictions, for once the afflictions have become familiar, they will be harder to avoid. So it makes the point that it is the practice of the bodhisattvas to confront the afflictions immediately when they arise in the mind. This is not the kind of approach we have. We do not take the trouble to confront the afflictions as soon as they arise in our mind. We kind of let it be, and then we become habituated to such afflictions arising within our mind stream, and then we form habits out of this kind of mindlessness. So the practice of a bodhisattva is to immediately confront the afflictions whenever they arise within their mind stream. And the best weapon to overcome these afflictions and to confront them immediately as they arise in our minds is through the practice of mindfulness and awareness. So awareness is like a vigilant spy. So through developing mindfulness and awareness, then we realize whenever the afflictions arise in our mind, then we can exercise a sense of control over how, whether we become overcome by such afflictions or not. Yes.
Enenilada kasin do diwainara ta chiloga sumsodubadigi donasta todo tanda mambu jishedera donna chelam rososo khand dowenara donna khand chelam chichepa khawala dowenare susulega kharichiwainare ane rangi senji nekap chindachi ro susu donna dena nina ta khand kharichiwaina sendu khawdo tajchibures jundu tendang xinjian denba yi tu da de su ge tenba de xinjian ra ji le denba yi ani ka ne ta di go ni tan do ka che ola na xin de du ba che ba di ani je se shan ji sem ba de nyam ne re s ra su ge lo de ka do ta ma che tan do di ga la ani xin la ji xin de che de zo ani de le song ta ye ani je se shan ji sem ba de ge nyam ne re s.
So the 36th verse summarizes the previous verses, saying, in short, no matter what one might be doing, by examining the status of one's mind with continuous mindfulness and alertness to bring about the good of others, this is the practice of all the Bodhisattvas. So in the previous verse, we talked about the importance of introspection and how this introspection must be complemented with mindfulness and vigilance, and how this mindfulness and vigilance can help us to confront the afflictions as soon as they arise in our minds, and then we can exercise a sense of control over whether we become overcome by these afflictions or not. Now, in here it talks about how the practice of the Bodhisattvas is not just only limited to that process of introspection and that process of mindfulness and vigilance, but then as you begin to, it is the practice of the Bodhisattvas through this introspection, complemented by mindfulness and vigilance, to actively benefit others. This is the practice of the Bodhisattvas.
Ta suzuki tendegi zundu chebala tenera teda zunbe esa dupi gyawana ta suzuki bezun che nye da tsen da ta kawa dowa inara suzuki chiki suzuki semla sungchu che ta meke chibu tsurungla soba sunga ta tanda mambu che nganzu she rwa zizu tsangwa chebegi ani gyawana ta yang hua che rwa gyawana mus tayen roi dunghe sebi shir dindewi tanda ngana suzuki gyejo kandiji chewa ina yang suzu chibu tanda mayinge diya simche samagi tanda yin song yang hua che rwa 타연 로이 가서 로이 동해 세위치도 타연 로어 숨제 타지게 동해 세게 치도 인상 라니 지보게 많이 봐라 대야 코손 남바라 답에서 시럽지 대야 소주 그래와도 데들 마음이 베라 다 근데 위카르 점바이나 쓰로이나 다 간다 코손 이게 답이 고니라 남바 답이 고니 근데 시럽지 아니 샹치 호와지스 나래일데 근데 다 디죠 좀 호와쳐라 다수 가르치we 니가 니자 되도 소소 유가든로에나 근데 소소게 냠내지 지샤주디 겨와사샤주디 소소치포 마인가 진심이 당치기 인사에 봐 호와치고 버렸어.
So then the 37th verse talks about the importance of dedicating one's merit as well as making dedication prayers. And it reads, the practice of all the Bodhisattvas is to dedicate towards enlightenment all the virtue to be gained through making effort in these ways, with wisdom that is purified entirely of the three conceptual spheres, so as to dispel the suffering of the infinity of beings. So herein it talks about how, as you begin to cultivate your practice and make effort in this manner, then one should always remember that the merit or the virtue that one gains or the good karma that one accumulates through this practice, one must always make it a point to dedicate it towards the enlightenment, towards one's own enlightenment, for the sake of all sentient beings.
가르치는 수 교사샤지도 군다만 얘가는 왜 호야다 아니 지난 가지고 호와 있는 가지고 교사샤지디 단티포르로 콘도로 가지로 우토단 땅도 제로 뭐지 지기라 어디 인정 뭐만 봐 파스수기 조비 산제 고방마다 봐도 인상 호와 있는 디버도 돼야다 봐 내가 가지고 딜려야 kesi chi tibaji ani jatsun na lu boina tende wi jatsu ma ga to kodegire la jo chesa su yo sa sha ji de mo ina su kan la mo atela ting de budi ani ma me ba to degire la jo.
So the importance of making the dedication is to kind of renew that motivation every day, as well as, for example, as lay people, it's important for us to first to wake in the morning with a good motivation, and then as the day ends, to always do these dedications at the end of the day. Make this dedication that any good deed that I did today, may the karma that I accumulate from such good deeds be dedicated towards enlightenment, so that as I achieve perfect and complete enlightenment, may I be able to help the limitless sentient beings. So when you do such a thing, then it is explained that the root virtue or the root merit remains intact until you achieve enlightenment for yourself. So the kind of example that is used is, if a drop of water travels into the ocean, then unless and until the ocean itself ceases to exist, that drop of water is still in the ocean.
Tadi tama dile dra da khora da di tsambo bodi ji khasa ji rum shira di ge ani tsamgo bi goden ro di kharela na khora ni ro do ji tenju la da do che ji ba tenju da khare ne di nam le sun bi thyen sra tu samen na she sha ji sun sha bi da da tamban na ji sun gi je ta ne ani din do ji na lo khare sun she bi sun sha ba di khora di ge se thane je se na je la le sun ju da den de ani saruru chena ani lale so do khora sun sha re la ra sun sha yes tela ani jese namla karsa jese lamla hendu ko khona de ti goye de khasana jese shanju sen de chebe ge lamla shu lo yoni ge shu de go ra shu de be kansa ge dunzu gi chi de gi tishe la.
So now what follows is an explanation of the intent with which the writer composed this particular text. So Mulchu Tomizangmo, he explains that here I have set down for those who wish to follow the Bodhisattva path 37 such practices to be adopted by all the Buddha's heirs based on what is taught in the sutras, tantras and treatises, and following the instructions of the great masters of the past. So he says that this particular text that he has composed here remains faithful to the instructions of the great masters of the past, and he drew upon the teachings in the sutras, the commentaries, and the tantric literature to present this 37 practices of the Bodhisattva.
Tene korangi tene khala da korangi tesma mensa ro sumu da ra lo de me shi se jangba chue shir de inzang ani so lo de memba che ani jangba lo jong de pusun so me ba inzang keban jibi se debjor ma chi cha mi keba do gawa che wa ra ani tende ge khol debjor la dinga zo ma tin de tsing hembo da tene yo ma res me ba ina ya do ta be sun la tembe shir tan do da tenje le zo shwe ge chi ra tembi shir la is tendi na kan tembi shir jese la ne tumi labor sen la dengi ge jese gi chuba do ani su chuo me ba nor me ba ji ta ya ji tu sambu du ro la ora ina no yu sigre nga chang ge de keba do de ke me so ta krai ta nga je da kimban jom me chi de ne su ni su ra.
And then if the first verse that we just talked about is the kind of statement of intent, then what follows, the following verse is an expression of humility. And he says, since my intellect is only feeble and I have studied but a little, this is not a composition likely to delight the connoisseurs. Yet since I've relied upon the sutras and what the saints have taught, I feel these are indeed the genuine trainings of the Buddha's heirs. So it's kind of customary in the classic Buddhist literature to kind of always assume an air of humility in composing anything. So herein he's making the point that if you are who has a taste for finer literature and beautiful words, maybe the text would not particularly appeal to your taste. But then, since it is an authentic text which remains faithful to the oral and textual lineages, then it is indeed a genuine text.
Tadi tanda tsigan shimbadi kharasung udlana Quran taji no da chuyu na tinde zobagom la ida zogom zero shila ida rida mwen chang as jese cheba lapchen na ta jese shanju zebe cheba zebe lapchen bu tsuto u tinde jirba ine yang so lome danda la lome ma ngara chinga meshin ji is dege jese shanju zebe cheba zebe ting pa pa kale khabu res ra ya poji shedi shiris ane datila tinde insan gyawa da ane ma tanda dewa mi gyoro tende yunsi resra shegoya da mashi goya shewa da soba tende ge ani nibe gi tsoro de mandi ba gi tende ta ngala ndochi mambu yosi gi resra tende gi tsoro de mambu yobi ge chita kesi yoba inasra ani tamba na jila ka cheba tamba churang zo ge ani tele zoba gomro chi yes.
And if the first is a statement of intent and the second is an expression of humility, the third is a kind of a disclaimer. Wherein he says, still the tremendous waves of activity of the Bodhisattvas are difficult for simple-minded folk like me to comprehend, and I must therefore beg the indulgence of all the perfect saints for any contradictions, irrelevancies, or other flaws in this this may contain. So he says that there might be some sort of contradictions, irrelevances, disconnects, and other flaws in this text, since he himself is a humble, simple man. So it's almost impossible to kind of encapsulate the tremendous activity of the Bodhisattvas themselves.
Dila idwa tama digi kharsung utsna tele chungwi da sazra tanda kanche shaba tele chungwi se gewe rowa kans ta sozo yita ngila sashi chiba do reshi ngila sashi bi gewa chojura tele chungwi ane rowa simcha tangi ki tanda rowa kanche tanda shanchu sanda kanzo shanchu sanda yorwa tendewi shanchu tanda kanzo shanchu sanchu kis ta sipa tanga shiwa la yorwa tali mnawe 아니 신레 징고 대단 숨버르스 다 간지 지기 상치 위산라 소바냐니 제바다 다스소 게좀 마부지 체 디기 아니 카르스나 데부디 게베 데부디 로와 심제 타지 아니 신레 직다부기 아니 대다 숨버지 차와 쇼를 nemta 나남도 제다.
And the last line is a reiteration of the dedication. Through whatever merit has here been gained, may all beings generate sublime bodhicitta, both relative and absolute, and through this come to equal Lord Avalokiteshvara, transcending the extremes of existence and quiescence. So it's a dedication prayer, and it makes the aspirational prayer that through the merit that he has gained by composing this text, may all sentient beings be able to generate within themselves the altruistic intention of bodhicitta. So in bodhicitta we talk about two types of bodhicitta, a relative bodhicitta and an absolute bodhicitta, or a conventional bodhicitta, or and an ultimate bodhicitta. And by generating this sublime altruistic intention of bodhicitta, then may all sentient beings come to be like Lord Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassion, transcending the extremes of existence and quiescence. Quiescence here refers to the extremely pacified state of bliss wherein you do not engage in any activity.
Tisu chune nge she ko san shu samsra chezan de sanchu sen le de le sen za chimo de na ona di che gi ju de kar la na ra ta sen me che dan de kar la na sen chi tu ni de sra jine me nga de ju go sen chi su da ani da jen nyam je go sen chi su pe da jen nyam je go sen chi su ka zu de ra.
So then, as we now come to the end of the text, as I made the promise that if we have the time, we will discuss in further detail the methods through which one can begin to generate such an altruistic intention of bodhicitta. So one of the methods we have already discussed, which is that process of equalizing and exchanging the self with others or self for others. And now the other method through which one generates the altruistic intention of bodhicitta is a more gradual process, and it's called the 7 precepts of causes and fruit.
근데 인다 가서 단다 디간 데진도 아니 디질라 가서 저한테는 요래 산이 쇼기야 치즈 저한테는 저라 안 캐나다로 또빠 간데지요 있는 투바 또빠 나도 가리나 사마티로 치스라.
So then we will discuss these things, and after this it will be a question and answer session, and I think it's good if we continue with question and answer sessions throughout the sessions that we have left tomorrow in the morning too. So I encourage you to ask any kind of questions or any kind of doubts that you still have.
근데 다 가정도 지내 명화된 뒤요마라. 뒤요마라. 그래서 지내 명화된 칼라나 다뭐 맛이 봐시라. 텐텐바 텐조와 예용 샹바 이제 하상들이라.
마시바 텐텐바 텐조와 예용
샹바
샹바
이제
닝제
하상
하상라. So the 7 precepts of causes and fruit is in this order. First, recognizing all sentient beings as mothers, and then through that recognition, remembering their kindness. Through in this order, the 7 precepts of causes and fruit are recognizing all sentient beings as your mother. Through that recognition, remembering their kindness, and then as you remember their kindness, you actively try to repay their kindness. And then the third is such a motivation or such a way of looking at sentient beings becoming appealing to your mind. And then the fourth one is to develop love. Fifth one, to develop compassion. And then the seventh one, then the last one is to develop a pure resolve to help all mother sentient beings.
제가 다 강조 단다 심제하지 마시바라 이더라. 당주 레진데다 저 하시 켈렌지나 먼저 제와라 장가메 발 제와마부 질렌 사람 잡는디가. 봐. 릴레온디가 미르데네 치르데네 치시미다. 가레나 제와마부 질렌디가 먼저 제와라 장가찌마도야. 토마메 바마. 근데 장가찌마도야 질렌라. 근데 이자 먼저기 아마디야 장가찌마도야. 제가 심제하지 가서 파츠 마체마니 비지자 메라야지. 인질레오라. 제가 심제하지라기 마시발라디 마이네 짐지 단데기라니 마디마고바. 라장 하마하마 된데 너들 마이바치.
So the first of these, recognizing all sentient beings as your mothers, it relates to the fact that from the Buddhist perspective, from beginningless time, we have taken countless births in samsara. So then if we have taken countless births in samsara, we have had countless mothers throughout all that time. So then it makes sense that at one point, all sentient beings have at one point or the other served as our mothers. So this is how we come to recognize all sentient beings as our mothers.
제가 마일레다 가서 이마 가서 진짜로 걸어라. 네, 진짜다지라기 마일레다. 라이 빠빠쳐 아마이바들은 집어 먹지요라. 아니 가서 잠자 바주다 치다 정말 가서 아마이라고라. 인큐 치부를 바주고 베인벨라니도 근데 집을래 온 거라. 이내 더는 오히려 지금 장하면 아마 차려라.
So then when we first learn of this or recognize this recognition of all sentient beings as our mothers, then when we are young, as we first learn to engage in debate, then there were many questions that used to arise. For example, someone used to ask that, okay, then if all sentient beings are your mothers, then your father must be your mother too. And then also someone asked the question that, okay, since all sentient beings are your mothers, then all these cows, dogs, cats, they are your mothers as well. So in that, it's a funny kind of way to look at it. But then this is not what we mean. We mean that we recognize that all sentient beings have been our mothers.
마시발라 가서 편도 가래를 나나라 단대기 맛 지나 가서 미참말라네 샴다 니지 질리고 막 데스칼레 커버라 티가라 직소선이 니데다 저보 저모다 자게게게로 나로 직난자로지 뭐도 배 이미 유메 데스칼레나 에 콜라 저어들 레카도 라 때는 만날리로 직 사지질 주로 잡잖아 먼저 뭐시버지 에면 시라 참말이 무슨데 미지 바 참말이라 따수수기 뭐시반에 겐게 게루이나레 지 파마이나 데데지 사지질 지 강이 테서질 요인 람사디 카르치나 얘기 파와 아카리나 토포토모인 디 카르치 람사가 센레다 제사 센다지 요지도 라 다단다 가서 아마시에디 칼라나 수수게 마디 녀레 저 하말라 라니레 상조 데니 친유니 인자 들라 라시기 딱콜라 마이 제비 네거래 아니 간조라 녀다 센다다 사야 또야 야리 야정 간조 데데기 다부져요라 타나 치데 시미지기 저월레나 이제 그런 게 부부들 강요주의 아마디긴 전수받아 지기도 세상 간들 된디치 대체형들 라시기 간들 미참말라 샴베기 로체야 펜토
So then, what then is the point of recognizing all sentient beings as having been your mother? So it comes from the fact that when we think about love and compassion and how these qualities of the mind develop in ourselves, then our way of generating love and compassion is very limited in the way that we extend our love and compassion only to our immediate relations and only to those people who we consider to be close and near to us. And in this process, we do not recognize, then we create a sort of nearness and farness between ourselves and others. So what is the point of recognizing all sentient beings as having been your mother? For example, let's say that there has been a natural disaster in Manali and the news came out just now. If you do not know anyone from Manali, then you have no appreciation for this news at all. You feel no sense of concern at all. Whereas if you have someone you know, say not even your parents, a friend or someone, and then you hear of this news, immediately you have a natural sense of concern, like what happened to this person. So it should, our sense of concern should not be dictated by made-up conceptions of nearness and farness. And when we understand that from beginningless time, that all sentient beings have been at your mother at one point or the other, then it makes sense to extend that love and compassion and concern towards all sentient beings. And when we do that, then recognizing them as mothers is very helpful, because when we think about love and compassion and concern and care, then there cannot be a more pure example of the expression of love, care, concern, and compassion than a mother's love for a child. Not just human beings. Even look at the cats, dogs. When they give birth, like they take care of the puppies and kittens to the best of their capability without any kind of thought about their own well-being and so forth. So this is the purest expression of love, care, and compassion. So that's why it is important to contemplate on the truth that all sentient beings have been your mother. And through that we can learn to open up our motivations to encompass all sentient beings. Yes.
제자다 근데 이나 오늘 저 하마들가 소리 다 마기 아마 근데 뭐 부지 진유나 다 집이 내거랑 근데 텐션 보였다 마시 바 텐션 발라야 이발려라 텐션 발라야 다 그 까든 데는 가도 데리 까든 텐 온디가라 라 아니 다다 근데 텐 뭐 부지 가서 하대라 근데 텐 온다 까든 텐 온디가라 다 까든 텐 바탕이 뭐야 단다기 수수기 마야 경 하마라니 마체니 단다 강이 가라 토요일 소리 나래 지사야 통해 있나래 따직 나와 차야 중이 마부지 나대라 근데 나온디가라 안 단데 중에 있는다 아주 들을 땀 샤야 많이 라 텐소 안디가라 가슴버려 파테네스야기 텐소 이로체고.
So then through this recognition then we begin to remember their kindness. So you know how a mother raises up a child with the utmost care, concern, love and compassion. So we need to remember this, that if all sentient beings have served as our mothers, then they have They have brought us up in a previous birth with the same care, compassion, and love. And then remembering their kindness, then we now need to come to a decision to repay their kindness too. Just remembering and recognizing sentient beings as having been your mother and their kindness doesn't help. Now we need to repay their kindness.
마시게 되면 통하죠. 영어라리가라 가서 엔드로이즈다. 소속이 아마딜라 가르잖아. 마다 아마도 가지고 동의지네라. 소속이 말을 보고 주는 것도 예잖아. 그 마다 손주시다. 아치 아마야 야범도 야범도 동의도 나고도 질라나. 그디 마가로 쉬지다. 아마딜라 손주시. 봐. 그 아마딜라 가르모 가리네. 콜레페 이동원치 통화가. 용. 이동원도 가르친 통화는 콜레카디치미. 봐. 콜레샹도 쓰이지. 근데 왜 이용 아니 팔아야 근데 이 동화들도 지원되거나 아니 근데 왜 상별로도 죠 그래 그래서 가는 거 가는다 그까지 전부 인상 하래 배 편도 야보 인상다 이게 거기 너 지고 말아 그래 근데 또 안들 상별로 죠 그래서 내가 가서 미스도 쓰이는 좋은 가리는 참마다 상별로 집었다 돼 그냥 너는 가서 애래요 말이야 진도 하고도 가서 이제 야가치 해요 양지 돈 쪼드는 막 통주시에 로시리다
So the fourth one is very important, appealing to the mind. So it doesn't say appealing to the senses, it says appealing to the mind. So look at the relationship between the child and the mother. It doesn't matter whether the mother is poor, mother is ugly, it doesn't matter. If someone begins to talk about the mother in a very disrespectful manner, the child immediately begins to defend the mother. Why does this happen? This happens because the child, remembering the mother's kindness, love, care and compassion, develops a sort of innate respect and reverence for the mother, which comes from the fact that all these qualities of the mind, love, care and compassion, appeals to the child, rather than appealing to the senses, appeals to the mind of the child. Whereas if we think about it, the way we relate to things and people, and with respect to whether they appeal to us or not, it's more out of economic consideration, it's more out based on appearances and so forth. So if something has to appeal to us, it makes sense that it appeals on a deeper level rather than outside appearances and economic or considerations about gain and so forth. Just the expression, that untainted expression of love and compassion makes it appealing, the relation to the mind of the child. So we need to develop a similar kind of attitude towards all sentient beings, that all sentient beings, irrespective of the manner in which they have manifested they are appealing to our minds because they have been our mothers. And when you develop this attitude of sentient beings having been your mother, appealing to the mind, then what follows is a natural sense of love, is a natural sense of compassion for sentient beings. Yes.
Tadi kande ji hakuri pena ngado chunjugala ngado pogo chunjinda da hago mara tezi andalo je godunde anzu kamal damal lana ngado pelung na yo 다 지난번 말할 때 양이 좋은 일에 그래도 내가 나중에 단도에나 가도 그 슈로 되려다 소속이 나한테 미친 붙여서는 소속 발라 아마 야보 말에 지지지는 모두 수행이 참 그일라니들 막아야 될 지다 오늘 때도 대충 소속을 라마도 오다 저보도 못들 갔다 와이나 모두 그립니다 라 소속이 지니에 쇼들에 갔다 좀 칼은 콜리티 되어다 된 첨부인 바도 인데지가 나서 지기다 단대 있는 것들이었다 보고 지고 말이야 소속이 때 타니에서 가보니고 저보도 못게 가게 거리는 인데지를 미션바기 지 마스터지라 남상하도 들 일로 맞아야 리다.
So then this is the importance of relating to sentient beings, that it has to appeal to the mind rather than to the senses. And this is, as we already discussed, most evident when we are young, and the way in which we defend our mothers, our parents, our relatives who have shown us kindness, compassion and care and so forth. if someone begins to speak badly of such persons, then immediately we come to their defense. Why do we come to their defense? We come to their defense because we have received these expressions of love, care and compassion from them, and this appeals to our mind. As this appeals to our mind, naturally we have a sense of gratitude towards these people. So then this is very important. Now as we realize this, then it's important to kind of open up our motivation to look at all sentient beings as appealing. And as a consequence of this change in attitude, then love and compassion flows naturally. So love is that wish to see others happy, and compassion is that wish to free others from suffering. So then, as we said now, we develop love and compassion towards sentient beings. Love being that wish to see others happy, and compassion being that unbearable feeling that you want to free others from suffering. And then as a consequence of that, we need to develop what is called pure resolve to free others from suffering and place them in a state of happiness. So what do we really mean by pure resolve? So in the classical explanation, then it uses this example. Pure resolve is highlighted in the act of a father jumping into the water, seeing his child is drowning. So the other method is, as we already talked about, that process of equalizing and exchanging the self for others. So in this process, we first need to recognize the basic fact that all sentient beings desire happiness and do not want suffering. So if all sentient beings are similar in that manner, then when we think about others, we should always remind us of ourselves of this fact. And when we remind ourselves of this fact, then we come to, gradually we come to the acceptance of this fact. And when you come to the gradual acceptance of this fact, then our actions, thoughts, and so forth can be informed by the acceptance of this fact. So, for example, when you sometimes unknowingly inflict harm on someone, and then you come to realize it, sometimes we do not take the trouble to say that this was your fault or so forth. But then we at least can come to a place in wherein you come to accept this fact. Oh, just as I would not appreciate it if something like that was done to me, then it makes sense for me not to do these things again to someone else. So when it can start from a simple place like that. And then when we say exchanging the self for others, then it's not the case that we can give our happiness and take others' suffering upon ourselves like that. It maybe starts from a process of visualization first, wherein you imagine that you are sending out all your virtues and happiness to others, and then you are taking upon their suffering upon yourself. Chiwa-chis. Teni shingi dungi rangi thangdo langwa lai jira, tashi nyamje lai dilaga, di ini gotsa maso kar lagi res.
Rere, tapena karero la dashi, pene shen la dungi, ngala dewa, chita ngala sama dewa dewa da dungi mende kuchi barda ra. Ine ya, zanda ngala jeo la di kanda jilana, ngala dewa ko banashi, kola ya dewa ko. Kola dungi mende banashi, ngaya dungi dewa na. Di ija tsumba, ra. Tomba tindi sama.
First, rather than exchange, it's important to realize what is the implication of equalizing the self and the others. So what does it really mean when we come to an acceptance that I do not want suffering? So just as I don't want suffering, others don't want suffering. And I desire happiness. So just as I desire happiness, others desire happiness too. So we need to ask ourselves the question, what is the implication of this fact that all sentient beings desire happiness and do not want suffering? We are all equal. First, it's important, rather than jumping to the step of exchanging, it's important to come to the acceptance of this similarity, of the equalness of sentient beings in wanting happiness and not desiring suffering.
차와제디 땅을 드네 봐도라 아 차와 슈점 보지잖아 걔나라 방나 강이네 간절라 방나 강이라 답변에 날 니두도 어다 쳐 봐야디테 칼로다 바슈점 봐다 아니 집어라 이네 얘기 니두도 출을 때어이나 다쳐디 칼로다 소소 등에디 파당들래로 차여라 소소기 대화디 다디 차발라 차바카피 아니 디 등에도 많이 세라 디 대화 출을 때셔지 다 딘데로야 때 심발바 되시자라.
So if we understand this, then we can actually engage in actions that are informed by the acceptance of this fact. For example, now it's raining, and then let's say you have to go out. You don't have an umbrella. I happen to have an umbrella, but you have to go out urgently. So then, as we are both similar in having to go out, but then I take the decision that as I will get wet if I go into the rain without an umbrella, this person is bound to get wet. So I will take it upon myself to give my umbrella to this person. So you are exchanging your own comfort for someone else's suffering, not suffering in this case, but discomfort, let's say. So it can start from a small place like that. And then we can begin to open up our motivation for bigger things.
다들도 친구라 답변한 거지 양 사실은 지리 강도 나도 해로 나 특집반에 해 고도 그런데라 난 안가 나고를 쳐나고 오케이 당가 나 이렇게 막 쳐는 나 맞추지는 실제로 라 되게 약으로 되어 있는 다양한 체르체르 상담 소동 가야지 되어이느라 같이 준치 인지면 쉬거들라나 다 건지는 최셔를 하시는 데를 되게 제대로 로고야 체르체르 왔다 나도 또 친구라.
So then it's a matter of how one cultivates a practice in opening up one's motivation gradually, in kind of broadening the scope of motivation gradually. For example, right now it's a very small example and it's a very small act. Then let's say we go trekking somewhere. Then in those high up places, then you need medicine for altitude sickness or anything. But there is only one pill. Then you can take the decision in those times to give the pill to someone who needs it. Right? And then now when we talk about more like grand acts, so to say, then it could be the case that if there comes a situation wherein it is decided that either one of you has to die, then it is the scope of the motivation, the scope of the motivation of a Bodhisattva to to give up their lives in this instance.
소소이 개뱅이 기고치도 거의 또 다양이나래 lumba penso maja inare ro te gandu lo sana kar kholanga lo bondra mamma degi nawaj kon people lo ni chonga ni shisum chu khadi digin pha tu baje se tu baje rani chipo raje shembang sana chan tan tan na dungye we cham dene le.
So then this simple fact needs to be accepted if one wants to generate such a sublime intention. And now the implication of not accepting such an altruistic intention is not only related to the generation of a altruistic intention, it has real world implications. For example, all war, conflict, and contaminated products that the corporations come out with comes from this disregard of this basic fact of humanity. They don't care about this fact that everyone wants happiness and everyone does not want suffering. They completely disregard this. And as a result, wars, conflict, strife, and all these unhealthy products, contaminated products, environmental degradation, all comes from this total disregard of a basic fact.
아니 간치부 강이체 메어라 그래서 강이 무슨 상황 제가 나라서래 다라 옆다야 한 죽지 뭐라 라니라 기보다 대보다 다 먹은 거야 진주신이만 지 상담 소설라 옆라.
So then if everyone comes to a full acceptance of this fact, then maybe the world would be a much better place. And this is the task of the Bodhisattva, to look at everyone with this acceptance. And now when we say that corporations, wars, and all come from this disregard, denial of this fact, then we need to look at ourselves too. We normally deny this fact as well, because we only focus about I, me. We say, I want happiness, I don't want suffering, and then completely disregard the other side of the coin. But who knows, in this group, maybe there are bodhisattvas. So we cannot really judge people by the funny clothes that they wear and outside appearances.
Okay, honey.
So, any questions? Yes?
Yeah. Back in verse 37, it refers to the third line of the verse is, with wisdom that is purified entirely of the three conceptual spheres. I was wondering what that's referring to.
똑보이 콜숨레지가 여기 숨속도 어디 가리라기 그랬어라. 이 시에 똑보이 콜숨도 제어해지가.
다치당아도 단다 디가는 딜마잖아데 코숨이 발라드라. 코르숨라디 가도 단다 젬발 바잖아 제다. 시랄롤레 카른데 자원 파이유도 가.
다디 니마마이 발에 군주 직시기도. 유도 유진이마 요마래라.
다티 어디 인기라. 저디가 신 따라서 챤디라.
So then the three conceptual spheres, first we need to try to think about how the three conceptual spheres relate to generosity, as an example. We already talked about that. And then when we come to understand that, then all these comes from a conception of a separate entity called object, subject, and the act itself. So wisdom is exactly purified. Wisdom that is purified of the three conceptual spheres is exactly that non-dual wisdom. Non-dual in the sense that there is no distinction at this point not distinction, no active discrimination between an object and a subject, perceived and the perceiver, because both the perceived and the perceiver are empty of inherent existence.
Thank you.
다 근데 인디고라라 다 아버지는 마부지 장브레 아니 삼타에 되게 지미로와 아니 키나즈기 걸에 다당아서 되면 쉬샤지디기 문에 레샤스산데 질레세 다 페션한테 되게 순샤사로 슬리드 선한도 가드로 슬리드.
So then it is very important to take the time to contemplate on these teachings. And now as we have come to the end of the root text itself, I want to ask you a question. What is the kind of general feeling you have with regards to the text that we have studied so far? Are you able to relate to it in a sense that, oh, what it says is applicable, it's true? Or do you have the feeling that, oh, it's just a text?
저 켈레스 말라.
No feelings?
야.
Kurangi chungpo shenasra jese laleng la vet suda pet haleva chigi mashi chetu samares. Mi haleva sambo dende chigi mashi chetu samares. Manzo kaya laegi ene che da pe khabar das kunzo ite sumiro. Kaya lana pet tachig la pet shen rojo ro chagi dus kuranzo namjumi samu danjo dana. Pet haleva dende chena tsele jewa ro tongo dus kunzo. Ina kuranzo roba che yusra. What the young she got the little years. Suzuki did the dodo, the Shidamata, Mishidala chick doing the Nidoji. There's a Manukoi Lagos, Ramazo Michiba, a chair in the chair, your maris. Mazo Kangwani, sometimes Susu, this Ramshich children in the Lagos. You know, that's some of them in the Inji Minji, Mazo me, the chair, Gipeja Jiglo, the Regilogic was. Near what the Ramshiko and the doors. She's a me Koran Ramshin Koran the day yourself.
They me so young Hama lay in there. The Yula, she meet nature or Rashikora and the Niji Rashi could do Mambusunga. She married with another multiple lodge the chick. In a thing a thousand and eight was on the lodge, which to Kanda, Niji Rashi. Yima could do this was a Tendigi Tolaya. Tachichido, let's say the Tanjira, big Sankam the candidate. Who would you do the data? Kokeshi Shingomata, a cool low dog hashing a 2 minute of a day, Chinji, Keshi Shingomare, Pama Vadin the Chila, love the Konyan in the Mare. In the Puchula and remove the day on a 10, right? TV now, Temuro said, mean zing the Tena, Pudi Magaya Chase, Los Latos. Only young meet the pay, Chambo Chidini get the leg parrot. Pugudi Gando Hochi, and they get loch legal. She's not on the Sangam Koran, Shamba the Zella Ganiji, Jirida, Sangam.
So it is indeed stressed from the Buddhist perspective that we are naturally compassionate and loving beings as human beings. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama also says this often, that human beings are naturally loving and compassionate beings. This is because whenever we see suffering, we have an unbearable sense that this person must be free from this suffering. even though if we do not actively, as the Bodhisattvas, take it upon ourselves to free such person from suffering, but we have this unease, natural unease when we see suffering. This indicates the natural quality of the human mind to develop compassion and love. And for example, it is also, I think, scientifically kind of proven at this point, because at one point they carried out an experiment wherein they were like very young babies, 3-4 months, unable to speak, and they cannot follow any sort of instruction, verbal instructions. So they did a brain scan of these babies, and then they begin to show pictures to these babies. And when they showed pictures of conflict, strife and fighting, then the babies naturally developed. The brain scan showed that babies were naturally disturbed. And when they showed pictures of people getting along, having fun and so forth, the brain scan of the baby naturally showed calmness and so forth. So this indicates that even from the point of view of science, it seems to indicate that human beings are naturally equipped with love and compassion. So then the follow-up question to such findings is, of course, if human beings are naturally equipped with a propensity for love and compassion, then why do all these wars, all these things happen? And this is because we are a product of causes and conditions, societal, interpersonal, so forth, many different causes and conditions. So these environment, causes and conditions shapes up how we grow, how we develop as a human being. So it's because of these causes and conditions, then war. A very young baby grows up to be a violent adult, and so forth. And this is very clearly highlighted by the fact that when we were kids, we had no conceptions of race, no conceptions of identifying ourselves along the differences of race, religion, and so forth. If you put children of different races together in a playground, they'll just play with each other. But then these very same children, when they grow up, begin to identify along the differences of race, religion, and so forth. Why? Because of societal conditions, so forth. Okay, let's